Decisions have consequences. And if you really want to live the life you desire to live, it's going to take you making perhaps better decisions than what you're making today. So, what are you planting and why? Let's talk about that.
My biggest thing was I made a decision when I was in college. I was like, I'm going to save myself for marriage because I was like, body, soul, and spirit, Lord, I'm yours. And one day I'm going to look in the face of my spouse. And I said this in our vows. I looked at Grant and I said, now, body, soul, and spirit, I'm yours. You have all of me. You have literally all of me.
Okay. As short as that clip was, there's so much said there that we're going to unpack because this is easily falling in the category of some controversial thoughts around celibacy, remaining abstinent from sex till marriage. Obviously, that's where a lot of this conversation goes. Perhaps virginity, right? We have a conversation over on this channel reacting to, dating as a virgin, what that experience is like. And if you guys want to check that video out, the link is in the description to go watch that replay. But I think when I first read or heard this, I don't think I was surprised because I'm very familiar with who the person speaking is. Her name is Madison Prewett Trout, now obviously married to her spouse, who she mentioned in that video. And she actually has a book that I've referenced before titled The Love Everybody Wants. It's actually a really good book. Covers dating, covers singleness, covers relationships, but all from a godly manner and perspective. And of course, from the lens of a woman. Her audience is women, young women, of course. So obviously it's not necessarily pertaining to me, but there's still a lot of good nuggets and wisdom to pull from it. And it's really, really interesting, man, especially in today's culture and world where it's crazy out here, right? I believe as currently recording this, Houston has had an uprising in HIV and STDs. I believe the number is at like 42,000 or more who have now contracted, sexually transmitted diseases. A lot of things can point to the reason why that is. But I think one of them is the conversation that we're having today on decisions and the importance, the importance of the decision you make and how it impacts not just today, but the life you're going to live. And it sounds like she was clear about the decision she made. But so many people might look at this and be like, yo, like, why does that have to have the implication of spiritual or Jesus or, it's just sex. Like, it's just casual sex. Why do we need to feel as if, well, if I don't make the same decision she does now, it's like, what, I'm not valuing myself, others, like how does all this work? And I think to my response to start things off is, well, we especially to this specific conversation, she's speaking to saving her body, remaining abstinent, and wanting to save that till marriage. That to me sounds like there comes a beginning understanding of the value of sex, what sex is, and the purposes of it. And I think that's always what it might revert back to, is understanding the beginnings, the origins, the meanings, the definitions of these things, and why it's important to honor that as opposed to maybe creating our own and running with it. Because if I am not the designer of such thing, I kind of want to know who designed it and why was it designed? What was the purposes of it designed? And how can I maximize that experience instead of maybe perhaps cheating myself in the process, like cheating myself, even though the pleasure might be up there and maxed out in the moment? Is it really all it can be for the intents and purposes that it was designed for? And the willingness of her to make that commitment, not just based off of definitions and what she knows, but who she knows to design such things and what its purposes are. I think it says a lot. And so much harm, danger, and unnecessary struggle was reserved and may I add, moved away from her life, making such a decision. And so when I go back to the statistic that I just shared with you of 42,000 or more individuals in the city of Houston alone who have contracted STDs, like over the last few months here, as we're currently recording this as of August 7th, 2024, and the number is only rising. The decision, man, decisions. That's all I can say. Decisions. Like it really boils down to that. And the willingness to perhaps overlook momentary pleasure for long-term gain, and not being willing to buy in to something that is more pleasurable up front, but perhaps is way more painful on the back end, as opposed to engaging the pain up front by saying no to certain things that aren't really beneficial to the person you desire to be, and actually wanting to experience things in its right context and in its full brevity of context, in the right season, in the right spaces, by just simply making decisions. And so I think that's a lot of what I hear in this message. And obviously we can go to the route of the importance of saving yourself to marriage, um, and understanding that it's really a sacred deal. Your body is really a sacred deal, and you want to honor that to the best of your abilities, and knowing that the person that you're marrying, right? Like, you want to give them that privilege of having you just as much as they're giving you the privilege of having them. And knowing how important that is, how much of a big deal that is when it comes to honoring one another, and more importantly, honoring God with one another. I think that that says a whole lot more than maybe I could perhaps put into words in this very moment. So, uh, man, what are some of your thoughts though, PD, on this?
So, as you alluded to, man, we have there's a lot of issues, right, when it comes to cultural things now, right? There's a lot of loose, um, there's a lot of freedom around sexuality that
Yeah.
is now more open and out in the open, and so she would be considered a rare bird. She falls in the category, you're a rare bird as a virgin. And a lot of people, if you saw our other video that we did, if you didn't go back and check that out, Sean talks about that. Um, and he's 24, and I applaud him for that. If there's, I'm proud that he knows gospel. I'm proud that he knows scripture. I'm proud that he's a man of God. But I'm more proud of the fact that he has kept his body in the place of a value that he was made and created in. And I think that that's really an important aspect. But hear me when I say this to you, Sean, regarding her thing. She said so many profound things there, man. I love
Hmm.
that. One, she said she made a decision. Decisions are important. The decision that you make, listen, if you don't like the fruit in your life, check the decisions that you make. And the decisions would be seed that you're planting. And so if the fruit that's hanging from your tree is fruit that you're like, yo, like, I don't like this, it's as simple as going back and checking your decisions, right? Because your decisions are seed that you plant in the soil that you walk in. That includes in the people that you're around, everything else. And so she said, I made a decision. She didn't say my mom did, my dad did, my church did. She said, I made a decision that I was going to give myself to a husband and not to everyone else. And she said, and to God, she's like, God, I belong to you right now. And when it's time and you have brought me a husband, then she then says, I love this part, John. I love this part. She said, when I got married to him, ooh, y'all, listen, this was so profound, man. She said, I looked him in his face. Do you understand how powerful it is to be able to look somebody in the face, having not had all of these other experiences and encounters with somebody else, and say, I saved who I am for us? you are getting you are getting what God has in store here. And please hear me, because some of y'all might turn this into something nasty. Don't look at it as nasty. She's talking about her value. She's like, I saved my value for the right person, for the right individual. I'm going to say this to the men out there watching too. There should be no shame in your game. Hey, she said, I looked him in his face and she said, I'm completely yours. There's nothing that is off limits here. I'm giving you everything, my mind, my body, my soul. She said that in there. She said everything. Please understand something. You just can't walk around just giving your penis and your vagina away. Okay? It's just the way that it is. Just I'm just saying it. This is what it is. And I need you to understand the power in that. That those things are reserved for people who are with you, who want you, who are committed to you in a marriage scenario and situation. And so we would look at this, Sean, immediately. A lot of people in the culture be like, see, that's why I don't do none of that, because I'm free. Can I tell you something? I'm not even judging you for it. The problem is all of the pain. And as a former pastor, can I tell y'all something? I actually still pastor people, but not in the church context. But let me just say this to you. As a former pastor, I have picked up more pieces from sexual brokenness than any other type of brokenness. I just want to tell you that. The pieces that I've had to pick up more than any have come from sexual brokenness. You know why? Because these people get into these scenarios and these situations, and then they put down their guard, and then they let their values down, and then they find themselves in this situation where they're like, well, I thought he was the one, I thought she was the one, I thought this was going to happen, that was going to happen, and the person never is. And so listen, I'm telling you, that is the key to this whole thing here, is not to be putting yourself in these situations where you're violating who you are. You're violating what you're supposed to be. You're violating how God made you and created you. See, you have to understand, Sean was alluding to this early, which I thought was profound. What is this made for? What is sex actually made for? Right? What are my private parts, my sexual organs actually made for? What is the purpose of them? Okay, on one hand, scripturally speaking, they're meant for pleasure and enjoyment. On the other hand, it's meant for reproduction, right? So there's two purposes for it. And the pleasure, though, is meant to be in the context of a marriage, not in the context of boyfriend, girlfriend, Tinders, hookups, whatever those scenarios might be, right? That's not what it was used for. But God said that the marriage bed is undefiled. In other words, hey, you and your spouse, y'all do what y'all do. Handle your business. Take care of business. Do the stuff you need to do. What we're struggling with right now, the thing that we're struggling with right now, is that we see somebody like this who said, I'm saving myself for this person, and we go, oh, they're missing it. What are they missing? Because I would put her up against anybody else and say, what did she miss that you've experienced? What did she miss outside of the pain, outside of hoping that you weren't pregnant, outside of hoping that you weren't one of those people in Houston getting one of the STDs that fall into that percentage rate and the other STDs that are out there? Because some stuff you cannot get rid of. They might medicate it for you, but you can't get rid of it. It's always going to be with you. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And I would put her up against you any day in any way, shape, or form. Sean, I would allow for her a story of purity and holding herself, and hopefully her husband did the same for her, because I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't know if she mentions that in her book. I just heard of her when you told me about her and saw the clip. But the reality is that this young lady has put herself in a position, man, where she gets to experience a beautiful thing. This is the last thing I'll say so far. Up to this point, rather. Look, a lot of you will say, how do you know the sex is good? I love this question. This is actually one of my favorite questions. This might be my favorite question from people who go, how do you know the sex is good? Or how do you know the sex isn't bad? Right? Here's my question. If you never had it, then you wouldn't know in the first place. Because you and this person will be the first two people to have the beauty of exploring what it means to share your body in a covenant with the other person and learn how to make love and not just have sex. If you never had it, you would never know. The only reason why you have the ability to compare is because you've been out there busting it open for other people.
Yeah, I really like that. I was just finding the comment. I'm going to pull it up here in just a second on our page to perhaps just give some additional thought. But again, I don't remember if she actually mentioned any of that in the book, and whether or not where he was in his sexual purity and things of that sort. But man, I just kind of found she has a chapter dealing with purity in this book. And here's a few thoughts that I think I just want to kind of read out of this. She says this in a paragraph. Your heart matters, your spirit matters, your body matters, your future matters. You can't change the past, but you can change what your future looks like. You can decide today to honor God, yourself, and your future spouse. And she actually goes on to kind of describe her experience getting her first car. And her dad, I believe, yeah, her dad going and getting this first car. And this is kind of the point that she makes in all of this. Everything that she wanted in a car that she would have picked out, it was like a dream. And the car was perfect. This was the point that she wanted to get out of this whole story. I didn't have to test drive the car first because my dad did. Dude. Dude, when I tell you I have an all caps here in this book. Hold up, let her cook. And she goes in on this whole aspect that she kind of opens up the chapter with each chapter she opens up with like a cultural statement, a very profiling cultural statement. This one dealing with the idea of you have to test drive the car before you take it off the lot. That's easily a misconstrued thought among culture. Man, I have to know what it's like to live with you before I marry you. I have to know what it's like to have sex with you before I make a decision to commit the rest of my life to you. I have to know all these different things. And again, we treat each other as products, not people. We treat each other as objects and not somebody that, one, is made in the image and likeness of God. And two, I really believe that it robs you of the entire purpose of experiencing marriage with one another. There is somebody trending right now. And again, I'm not going to necessarily say anything, of course, derogative in any kind of way to this, because I don't think I have anything like that to say. But there is a popular R&B artist named Queen Naija. She is in a 6-year-long relationship with an individual by the name of Clarence. I don't know their whole story. I'm sure if a fan ever caught this, they could break this down. We'd appreciate the breakdown in the comment section. But they just celebrated seemingly recently 6 years being together. They live together. They have children together. No ring, no marriage. And fans are looking around like, ooh, she kind of getting fed up. She's kind of getting to that point of being tired of the roses and the cars and the gifts, but no ring and no marriage. And people are like, man, you need to leave. You need to get out of there. And, it kind of just brought a thought for me, again, not knowing their specific situation, that I think what's really difficult in these situations is somebody or two people doing all these marital things without a covenant commitment. And so then you end up playing house and, you end up convincing yourself at some point, one person or the other, well, what's the point? What's the point of getting married? What's the point of walking down the aisle? What's the point of putting a ring on it? We're doing everything married people do anyway. Well, it's basically, you'll hear we're basically married, right? And so you feel the need to not even take that step. And so you stay at this, boyfriend, girlfriend, or in a lot of ways, you grow to a what are we type basis every time. And I got to tell you, man, it's heartbreaking for me to see, because what I see in that are two people who got together and didn't necessarily vet out all the things that were important to them,
right,
for where they were and what they wanted to do.
Right.
And so we just made things work. And then we brought children involved. Children got involved, right? Sexual compatibility got involved. So it's like, man, I would much rather stay in this than leave and deal with the pain of heartbreak and separation to start over, to find what I say I really want. And then we end up settling and being very, very complacent and not really sticking to our values, what we want, and what we really are pursuing. And it's a sad thing to see. But this is the last thing I'll say from this book. Again, she has a lot of one-liners in here that I think are phenomenal. She says, this marriage lasts your whole life. Sex does not. Oh. Boom. Just dropped it. Marriage lasts your whole life. Sex does not.
I was looking something up. You caught me off guard.
Man, she dropped it. And this is actually what she says also to this entire thing. And this is the last paragraph I'll read. And again, if you guys want to check this out, I don't have the cover on me. It's available on Amazon. I got this for maybe like $20 something, man. Again, amazing read, probably one of the better reads I've had this year. She says this also, We buy a car to get us from one location to the next. If anybody's following along, page 144 of the same book, it's something we use when we need it. Not to mention, it's something we trade out 5 to 10 years later when we get tired of it or the engine stops working. No human being is meant to be compared to a vehicle.
Bruh.
If you connect with someone emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, connecting with them physically will be natural and beautiful. And if not at first, you have trust, friendship, good communication, and understanding to improve all aspects of your relationship. When I tell you Madison Prewett Trout, I'm forgetting your name. Hold on, girl. Madison Prewett Trout, man. Like, a blessing to say the least. She has a podcast on on different platforms as well with her husband. I haven't listened to it, but I'm sure it's amazing. She's definitely got a gift. Last thought I'll say to this. I remember sharing a story a while back of an individual who got on TikTok and had a story time, to summarize it, of having a one night stand with a girl, and things ended rather prematurely. If you're catching my drift, I'm gonna just come out with it. Yeah, it was pretty quick, right? It was in and out through there. And man, so dude basically got kicked out in the middle of the night, right? Everything was good, and she was digging him up until that moment of the sexual encounter. When that happened and she was not satisfied, he was downstairs getting something to drink, and she said, yeah, you got to go, somebody else is on the way in like 7 minutes. Wow. And so he had to gather his stuff and go. Right. And he had to walk some distance to go to his car because he didn't park near the place, whatever sense it was. And it really, really revealed to me how in this culture it is so sad to see that somebody can potentially be so much to you that perhaps you've wanted in a person, but the sexual encounter wasn't up to par. And it's what helps you determine if this continues or not. And I think that is a sad, sad place to be. Yikes. Where we are using sex as a means to determine if this can continue, because all you're suggesting in that statement is that all I'm really worth to you is the sexual encounter. So it has to go beyond well, and I have to live up to a standard that, if we're being honest, cannot be consistently lived up to, even in a marriage, for that to be sustainable and for that marriage to be upheld in such a way. And I just think we're in really, really struggling, tough times where that's where it's at. And so when I come across perspectives like, Miss Trout shares in this book, it is refreshing to me, so refreshing to me, that there are people who still uphold these values and still choose to honor them with their life and not result to setting the bar in hell to get what they want. And to get what they feel they need in such a time. And it's refreshing in my humble opinion. And I think I am more, and I've said this in a previous video and I'll share it again, being a virgin and being somebody who chooses to value my body to such a degree. I am so okay. Trust me when I tell you, at peace with the many no's that I could encounter, that I have encountered and may continue to encounter, for that one right yes, who will value the things that I value in such a way. I just
listen, man. We talked about this on another platform.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was brought up on that platform is that, and I'm gonna say this to all of the ladies out there, young, old, doesn't matter who you are. The more quote bodies that you have, unless this dude just wants to use you, he gonna have a hard time talking about you about to be my wife. I'm gonna be totally honest with you.
Struggle.
Dudes have a major struggle with this ideal of, so man, and I'm gonna say it the way they say it in the street. Okay, it's not gonna be foul. I'm just saying, they say you men ran through. Dudes aren't, no, and they're just not gonna do it. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not redeemable. This doesn't mean you're not valuable. It doesn't even mean that God doesn't love you. But I'm telling you, it's different for ladies, man, than it is for men.
And I would say that's somewhat unfortunate. You know what I mean? Because I think the same should be looked at for men too. Because I hear men say that and they use that.
That's because it takes a woman for the man to be able to do what he does.
That's fair.
He can't do it. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
He can't be what he is without a woman allowing him to do it. But the women are going to take the brunt of that, Sean.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate.
It's so unfortunate because men are just as much hoes as the women they portray to be too.
100%.
And you know, and it's a sad deal. But go for it. Go for it.
No, I'm just saying. Look, ladies, I'm just telling you, as a husband who has 4 daughters, 35 to 23, who has 4 granddaughters. Listen to me. Listen, I've my whole life has been surrounded by women married and raising, and now caring for on a secondary level as a granddad. Y'all, hear me when I tell you, it's so much more worse for you. The women typically show up in shambles, Sean. They've come to my office. I've coached them. I've counseled them. I've sent them to therapy. All kinds of stuff, man. I sat with them while the pieces of their lives were broken. I'm going to tell you this story real quick. It's not even going to tell you the whole story. I'm just going to give you this snapshot. There's a lady who came to my office 2006, I believe it was. I'm going to say 2006. She walked in. She's like, I need to see you immediately, right away. And I was like, okay. And she came with the police. This is a true story. True story. God's my witness. She walked into the church office. She said, I need to see you right away. And when she pulled up, she had the local police with her. They were looking for one of the men who went to our church and her. They slept together. He didn't tell her that he had HIV. He fully knew that he had HIV. He fully knew it. He told her afterwards. And after she talked to a couple of friends, they were like, you need to call the police. And then you need to go have a conversation over there at the church. That, my friends, is a legitimate story. This happened in 2006. True story. Just as sure as I'm sitting here. True story. I'm telling you, listen, ladies, can I tell you something? Ooh, can I tell you something? You take almost all of the risk in sexual relationships. The social ones, right? The potential of being pregnant, right? And you have a tendency to carry all of the emotional baggage that comes with having given your body to some man, because it's the most intimate thing that you can do. Women take the majority of the risk when it comes to sexual relationships. It just is. I mean, it's just a fact, Sean. It just is what it is. And if you get yourself out there and it's unprotected premarital sex, it increases your risk of STDs, right? Unplanned pregnancies, things that you weren't necessarily wanting to do. The emotional attachment piece that I was just talking about totally can complicate everything else that happens. Again, you guys are the ones that walk away heartbroken. Men typically don't walk away heartbroken. So here's what I would tell you. This is the last thing I'm going to say. Here's what I would tell you. I would encourage you to emphasize focusing on emotional connection and friendship and valuing yourself, valuing your body, valuing your future, and making sure that, and man, let me just say this as a man. If a man loves you, he cares about you. And I've been wrestling with something else I'm going to say here in the end. Maybe Sean can share his thoughts on that.
Sure.
But if a man values you and he values himself and he's like, this is going to be my wife, this is going to be my one, he's not going to have a problem with you saying that this isn't going down. Matter of fact, he might be the one to share that with you and tell you that, hey, we need to make sure that we keep our distance in these areas and that we keep ourselves where we need to be appropriately. and go from there. And I think that's important. And I'm gonna say this too to all the young men out there. You might get upset at what I'm saying, but it's not that I don't care that you get upset, but I don't care. When you sleep with a man's daughter, you're disrespecting that man. That you're not married to him, you're disrespecting that man. I believe that with everything in my heart. I believe that you have disregarded this man, um, and you just said, I don't really care, because really you don't understand everything that went into raising that young lady and all the other stuff that's a part of putting her in a position to be loved, not to be used, not to be, an object of your just your sex, your release, and not somebody that you're going to love. And you probably don't have a daughter, so that's probably why your face is frowned up right now. But I'm telling you, I think you're actually violating that man, and the work that he put in to have that daughter. Now you might be saying, well, what about her? I'm talking to you though. I'm talking to you. Her too. Value yourself, ladies. Value yourself. Seriously. Because too, I would tell you, young lady, if that father raised you and he put you in a position to be able to be seen and valued, to run back to his arms after you have violated yourself, more than likely he's going to be there for you. But after you have violated yourself, you too have kind of just told him it didn't matter everything that he did for you, because this was more important. This was more important for you to go through this experience. It's really not. So guard yourselves.
Yeah, I'm just going back to Madison's quote: "Marriage lasts, sex does not." Um, I think, and I just want to make sure I heard you right. You said that if in a marriage and a man really loves you, he's not going to be so bothered if she says no, that we're not doing this.
No,
And
absolutely not.
yeah, and I actually agree with that, because I think there's so much more to it, man, than just whatever anybody can give each other physically. Like there's just so much more in depth there. For me, I think, I've always said this, or I guess I've said this more recently now than maybe ever. Like I genuinely think I felt like I've dealt with loss and areas of heartbreak before. But I genuinely just can't imagine being in a intimate sexual relationship with another girl, man, and then for that to no longer be the case and we separate. I feel like I would be in a whole nother level of heartbreak. One that I feel like in a lot of time, in a lot of moments, I'm like, bro, that would just be almost unbearable,
Hmm.
if not unbearable, because I just can't imagine that. Um, because at that point, it's you're literally saying to yourself, what more could I have done? Um, and I think that points back to perhaps you using your body in a way to ensure that this could be what you wanted it to be. And I think anytime you have to use your physical appearance to to be a reason why somebody remains, it's an issue. It's an
100%.
issue, and that person doesn't see you. And perhaps if that is what keeps you around that person, you don't see them. And I just genuinely don't believe that you are as ready for marriage as you may proclaim yourself to be if you need sexual activity in order to take it to the next level. I don't think you should be dating. I don't think you should be in such a perspective in space. I think there's a need to take a session, season, and a time to rewire and heal and reestablish your values, reestablish your boundaries, and be willing to live a life of alignment where you say, hey, this is what I'm saying, this is the decision I'm making, so these are the following decisions I need to make that reflects the values I want to hold. And anytime I encounter somebody that makes me challenge these things in a negative fashion, thereby making me go against what I say I value, I don't need it. I don't need to engage in that. And I don't need to really be impressed by that. I kind of want to share this clip. We're going to have a little bit of an extra reaction to kind of close this, because what you said was very profound. I'm going back to Robert Madu. He had a talk, I believe it was last year's relationship series, and he ended it with him and his wife discussing the topic of built to last. And his illustration of breaking this down was so phenomenal, because it put into picture what culture does versus basically how God has aligned it.
Mm.
And to really, I guess, put a pin in this for me is like, we're not suggesting, because I think what people hear when they're like, well, how you're expecting me to make a decision to spend the rest of my life with somebody I don't even know if I'm attracted to them, but you're conflating attraction to sexual compatibility. And what I'm saying to you is that there is a way you can learn you're attracted to somebody without getting in their bed and
Hmm.
without getting in their drawers. And it's a very cultural perspective to carry that makes you feel that you have to do that in order to see where this goes. And it's a very sad misconception. And I think part of that is because of a lot of what culture, rap songs, all these other kinds of things have poured into you that convinces you that this is something that has to be done. And may I add, honestly, from statistics, okay, practicing Christians have the most satisfied marriages. We're talking about people who don't just go to church, but actually apply the biblical standard to their life.
Right. Right.
73%. That's the highest rate of satisfied marriages compared to other religions and not even people who are religious. And so I think there's still so much value to these things that we have to, again, the whole segment of this conversation, make a decision on. And I think you want to be able to honor that, not just for the now, but for the moment. The recipe of regret. This is the last word I'll really say before I show this clip. Um, Immediate making decisions when you're tired, making decisions in isolation, and making decisions for immediate gratification.
Mm.
Recipe of regret. Shout out Robert Murdew. I ain't gonna act like I came up with that on my own, but it was beautiful. When you make decisions in isolation, you're not consoling or confiding into counseling around you to ensure that what you're about to do is something that should be done. Proverbs tells us that in a multitude of counselors, there's safety, right? So we have to be willing to trust that. So then you have to ask yourself, who am I surrounded by that I can trust with this information, and trust that some of the insight that they'll give is not just biblical but beneficial.
Right.
Because I think that makes sense. So then when you make decisions when you're tired and fatigued, right? Oftentimes you rush, you move in impatience, and then oftentimes you just settle, right? I'm just tired. I've been alone for so long. I have been sleeping in my own bed for so long. I don't know the feeling of somebody else next to me in my arms for so long. And so you contemplate on that so much that you're willing to go put yourself at risk, entangling with somebody that doesn't know you, doesn't want anything to do with you, and only wants you for the thing that you can provide them, not for who you are. And so you settle because you're tired, you're fatigued, right? And when you're doing that, there's a lot of poor decisions that come off the end. And we really have to find a way to find rest, like just legitimate rest and peace, and knowing that we don't need those things to be complete, because in Christ we are already complete. I'll leave that alone. Then there's decisions based for immediate gratification. So everybody wants everybody wants now, nobody wants to wait. Everybody wants what's in it for me in
So
this
true.
moment. Nobody wants to think about their future selves 3, 5, 6 years down the line. Will the same me appreciate the decision I'm making today? Right? Nobody
Not
wants
thinking
to.
that though. Not
No,
thinking
no
that.
one is, right? And it's okay. I'm growing in this too, right? I'm not saying that I got that all together, but I have seen the value of waiting just in so many other areas, not just relationally and intimately, just in so many other areas. And so you make these decisions where you're saying, man, I just want everything now. I don't want to keep doing the same thing every day. I don't want to continue to do the right things every day. How many men have I heard? Oh God. How many men have I heard on social media be so fed up with being the nice guy because they say they're not being rewarded with the same things the guy that treats the other women like trash is being rewarded, which is the sex.
Mm-hmm.
Not realizing that the reason you are a nice guy is not for the reward. You're a kind individual. One, because kindness is a human, like you ought to be kind. I don't know where we get this idea that you ought to be mean to get women. I don't know where that comes from, but kindness is one of the fruit of this, is a fruit of the spirit, right? So I don't get where that is.
Yeah.
And that's something that you got to unpack. But I would also say to this too, that it's not about being a good man for rewards. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, regardless of what the reward is.
Okay, let me ask you a question because I know that we have short time
Yeah.
frame here, but I got a question for you. 24 virgin.
Yeah.
What do you think you could be missing right now?
Nothing. And I say that genuinely because I have talked to enough people that have either came back to me that I was friends with who have dealt with crazy things as a result of sexual connections with people that weren't in marriage, or simply because I've just seen too much of people struggling, enduring so much heartbreak from those connections that went nowhere for them,
Mm-hmm.
that I just look at that. I'm like, well, how much how much foolish will it make me to say that, well, I'm better than you and much different than you, so I can do the same thing as you and expect a different result. I just don't see that. So to me, I don't think I'm missing anything, which is probably why I'm so satisfied in my singleness currently.
So, well, I'm glad you said that because there are people out here that are going to listen to this, and their whole thing is they feel like they're missing something.
No.
Can I tell you something? There are some experiences that are meant to be had only in the context. Outside of that, they're never what you think they were
Mm,
supposed to be.
mm,
I'm just being honest with you. It's the very same logic and reason why we don't give 12-year-olds cars to drive, because there's a time when it's appropriate, when it is right. And when you get to this certain place, then you have the ability to reason, to drive. Your reflexes, your understanding of the rest of traffic typically comes at 16. And then they offer you the opportunity to get a permit and then to start moving into the place where you can start to drive independently. Even they don't let you just drive independently. You have to have another driver in the car with you before you can just drive independently, unless you're of the over the age limit, and then you go. But typically when you want to get it, there's a permit that's required. See, the thing is, Sean, is everybody thinks they're missing something.
yeah.
And sometimes the thing you get before it's time becomes your enemy instead of your asset. Remember that.
Mm. No, I like that. Yeah.
It's a
Man.
curse instead of a blessing. It's a
Right.
curse instead of a blessing. What was meant to be a blessing now becomes a curse.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. So we're gonna react to this real quick clip to end all of this. And again, I always like to end these kinds of conversations because there are probably more people than we'll ever realize that are watching this and are like, yo, I've already blew it. And again, refer back to our previous pod where we kind of talked about this, but I just encourage you, man, that God can redeem and restore. So don't feel as if, again, as PD alluded to earlier, man, that it doesn't mean that you're not valuable because you have so many bodies or whatever the case is. It's just about the decision that you choose to make today.
I
And
do
are
want to
you
say keep your drawers on, though. I do want to say that.
absolutely,
Keep your
absolutely,
drawers on, keep your panties on, keep your underwear
yeah,
up. I do stay out of people's beds. I do
yeah,
want to say that. And I mean it. Like I ain't scared of nobody.
yeah.
Period.
Because I ain't gonna lie. There's a lot of people out here for real, man. Y'all so down for the activity, but don't want the consequences that follow, including raising a family and having children. And that's why you be leaving the kids with your parents all day every day because you didn't consider. Never mind. Anyway,
Right.
it is important that you recognize that God redeems and God can restore, and it's all based on the decisions you choose to make today to honor those things, and move forward with that. And don't bend that for somebody else's intensity and not their willingness to have genuine intimacy.
True story.
Intensity forces things in a faster manner. Intimacy is elongated. Longevity. This is something that is actually built to last. And intimacy is not always sexual intimacy, because that is what's preserved for marriage. But there are so many other facets of intimacy that are supposed to be built on prior to that, that actually is a way stronger indicator to let you know if this is somebody that you should actually spend the rest of your life with than perhaps how they perform in bed. Because some people are remaining in toxic relationships and can't leave because you continuously think about what they do to you in bed and not who they are. and it blinds you. It doesn't save you. So I'm going to react. We're going to share this clip, and then we're going to kind of close out this thought. It's going to be really, really quick.
These are 4 levels of intimacy and how we connect with other people. And it matters how you build. There's physical intimacy, social intimacy, intellectual intimacy, and spiritual intimacy. Physical is the smallest box. It's the smallest box because it has the most boundaries. And it's the smallest box because it's the most limited. I mean, there's only so much intimacy you can have in physical intimacy. There's only so long you can go in physical intimacy. This is important to the relationship, but you can't build on this. You cannot, but this is what everybody in our culture builds on. We build on the hot, passionate, intimate connect. You can't build on that. Sex does not make a relationship. Sex makes babies. It does not make a relationship.
So true. Yep.
It's important, but everybody, oh, she's so fine. I hear guys talk about anatomy as if you're marrying that anatomy and not the character behind the anatomy. This is important, but it is not the whole relationship. But so many people, oh, they're fine. Oh, I'm gonna build on the, oh yeah, we just had hot, passionate sex and we're connecting. This is what I've been saying the whole series. God created this, he designed it, he designed the context for it. It's not just toilet water. He actually has a place prepared for you, but people keep running to the toilet water just because they're thirsty. God says, no, I have it, I love it. It's not gross, it's beautiful, but I created a context for it. So many people love to build on the physical intimacy, and then on top of that, they're like, oh, we're passionate, and we had great connection in the bedroom, so now let's go to social intimacy, and social intimacy is great, but how many know it is limited to, there's only so many trips you can go on, there's only so many events you can go to, horseback riding, shooting archers and arrows, all of that good stuff is fine, but that's limited, and you can't build on that, because there's only so many places you can go and so many things you can do. But this is how our culture builds. Then, oh, you got intellectual intimacy. Yeah, this is how our culture builds. Start with the sex first, get the connection. How do they look? Oh, do y'all have time, fun together? And then intellectual intimacy. And whatever's going to drive this right here is what's at their core. What is their center? What do they think about men and women and relationships and raising kids? This is limited as well. Because how do you know intellectual intimacy is limited by your spouse's or the person's IQ? So it's limited. Man, some guy told me, he's like, I'm gonna mess up the phrase. I think he said a sapiosexual. I said, excuse me? That I get sexually stimulated by intellect. And I said, well, okay, that's great. Y'all just gonna have conversations. I'm like, but that's limited. What if your spouse or the person you're looking for doesn't have the same IQ as you? So that's limited. But this is how culture builds. And then we've already been intimate. Oh, we got social intimacy. Oh yeah, intellectual. And then, then we try to pile on spirituality on top of it. So now it's like we've already been intimate, hung out, we've gone on trips together. I think I know what they think about philosophy, but now let me just pile on going to church. And that's what we see all the time. Couples that have it in the wrong order. And now that everything's falling apart, now you want to say we ought to seek God. Now you want to come to the church. But this isn't the way God wanted you to build it. See, this is the biggest box, but how many know this box really shouldn't have a size? Because when you want to talk about connecting in the spirit, God is limitless. Deep cries out to deep every single day in all of eternity. We will spend our whole lives getting to know who this God is, but yet we throw this on top, and many people actually don't want God. They just want to fix the relationship.
Jesus. Yeah.
So they said, let's go to the series since they're talking about relationships. And now you're trying to throw spirituality, but you started building on the wrong order. You started building the wrong way. So watch this. When life happens, when storms come, all of a sudden let go. This is what happens. And this is what's happening in the culture right now. People have built the wrong way, but this is what God wants to do in this nation and in your life. He wants people that will start by saying, God, I'm going to pursue you. Come on, give me 2 people that say I'm going to passionately pursue God and watch him start doing something powerful. It starts right here. God, I'm going to pursue you. And then after that, once that's established, then once I know that this person is in love with Jesus and they're pursuing him, then I can start going for the intellectual. Because how many know when God starts changing your spirit, he'll start changing your mind. Your spirit will affect how you think about money, how you think about kids. He'll start transforming your mind. And then after that, then it gets social and you bring them to church and you start hanging out. But you got a strong foundation. And once you go from social, then you get married. And in the context of a marriage, that thing that is so intimate, that is like glue, that is not just 2 bodies coming together, but should only be the physical representation of every other place of intimacy. Then you put that on top. Watch this. Will this marriage, babe, come stand here with me. Will this marriage still be tested? You better believe it. Will this marriage still go through storms? You better believe. Will this marriage still have temptations and financial hardships? Yes, but the difference is you got a strong foundation. All these things are great, but it matters what you build on. So that means, guess what? When we're old and gray and I ain't got it going on and you ain't got it going on anymore and we got wrinkles in our face, we still gonna be together because we didn't build on the physicality. We didn't build on that. How do you know if we get broken, we can't go on the trip? I'm ride or die with you in an apartment. If we ain't got nothing but ramen noodles, I'd let it go to the 4 seasons, but I didn't build on that. So that can fade away. Intellectually, if you go through a season where maybe you're going through depression or postpartum, or maybe something happens to me in my old age and I have Alzheimer's, she will still be right there with me if my intellectual capacity is gone because I didn't build on that. This is what you need right here. On Christ, the solid rock, I stand all on the ground. Keep saying.
Yeah, and so I just think, bro, he killed that. He straight killed that. And I think that's that's kind of just where I want to end on things, man. It's a certain order and foundation that you want to build these things on, man. And it's clear that when you have it out of order, that's when all that stuff starts happening, and it just shakes your life, and you try to add God to it as if it's to fix your relationship. But you know, you gotta be willing to reorganize, reorder, restructure your life. And it all starts with making a decision, the right decision.
Absolutely.
That is considering not just the now, but your future, and being willing to honor that decision through the values you hold, honoring the people that you encounter with those decisions, and to those who will come across you and may cause you to go against the values you set, you know, to say no to those things because it does not align with the values and things that you have set before you.
100%.
Yeah. So, man, we appreciate you guys so much for this conversation. We hope it was beneficial, fruitful. Shout out to, again, Madison Prewett Trout. I keep messing up this girl's name. I'm so sorry. If you ever catch this, please don't. I don't mean to hold it to you. I love your book, by the way. You guys definitely go check this out. It's a really good read for all you guys who are single, ladies who are single, even the men. Listen, there's a lot of good stuff in here that I think is beneficial for you to catch on because it is very biblical centric. And so hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys like this kind of content, you want to see more, like, share, subscribe, turn on the post bell notification so you know the next time that we're posting. And we're dedicated to continuing bringing Christ to culture and engaging with viral clips such as this, bringing our thoughts to it, and hoping that it is beneficial and it lands with you somewhere along your journey. We appreciate you so much for this conversation. Until next time, be easy and be breezy. Peace.
Peace.